The time has come for Cameroonians who truly yearn for change to confront a truth that many have whispered, but too few have dared to pronounce aloud. The elections are over. The dust of ballots counted and ballots stolen has already settled. And while the sparks of hope still glow in many hearts, those sparks must now be fanned in the right direction. Cameroonians, Francophones, must speak honestly, courageously, and with the clarity of a people who finally understand that salvation does not and must not depend on the shoulders of one man, not in a struggle like theirs, not against a regime like theirs, not in a moment as critical as now. Yes, Tchiroma'S emerged from the chaos of the electoral season as a symbol of defiance, a voice that resonated with millions who long for change. Tchiroma'S stood before the people and spoke, not only as a presidential candidate, but as one who eventually declared that what is unfolding in Cameroon now is no longer an election dispute, but a revolution. A revolution, he insisted, must be understood in a different light, a different spirit, and a different discipline. And he is right. A revolution is not an event. It is not a campaign. It is not a personality. It is not a man. A revolution is an awakening. A revolution is an idea. A revolution is a collective conviction that refuses to die simply because one leader has been forced into exile. This is the moment for Francophones, for Cameroonians to understand what Ambazonians have long learned. The moment to see beyond a man and fix their gaze on the mission. Let this be stated without ambiguity. Tchiroma'S remains the leader of this Cameroon uprising. He declared it a revolution, and his voice ignited a spark. His courage during the electoral contest awakened a new political consciousness in a people battered for decades by fraud, by intimidation, manipulation, and hopelessness. But now, the elections have ended. Cameroonians must realize that it is not wise, not sustainable to build the entire hope of change around Tchiroma'S alone. This is not because he is weak. No. This is not because he has failed. Absolutely not. And this is not because he has abandoned anyone. Of course not. Far from it. It is because a revolution demands a structure and a vision far greater than the individual who first proclaimed its name. It is because the forces against Tchiroma'S and against the people of Cameroon are too powerful, too brutal, too calculating for Cameroonians to imagine that one man can stand alone and carry the nation into a new era. Look at the reality. Today, Tchiroma'S finds himself squeezed into a tight corner. He cannot move freely. He cannot speak freely. He cannot act freely too. He is exiled, monitored, hunted, and pressured from all sides by the regime that sees him as an existential threat and by international actors who prefer a Cameroon that remains predictable, even if it remains unjust. exile limits any leader, no matter how vibrant or determined. And because of that, much of the direction, much of the coordination, and much of the mobilization will now, by necessity, fall on Cameroonians, both at home and in the diaspora. This is not betrayal. This is not abandonment. This is what revolutions require. I want to be clear here, ladies and gentlemen. I am not for one moment suggesting that Isa Tchiroma can or should simply walk away. Not at all. He cannot. He must not. History has already shown us what happens when a leader loses the trust of the masses who once carried him on their shoulders. We saw it with John Frundi of the SDF, a man who began as the hope of an entire generation, but ended as a companion to the regime he once swore to uproot. The day the people realized that a man they trusted had chosen comfort over sacrifice, he was no longer a leader. He became a symbol of disappointment. Isa Tchiroma must never walk that path, and he knows it. The people will not forgive him at all. The people will not tolerate it. The momentum that has been generated, the awakening that has occurred, the sacrifices that have begun, this cannot end because the leader is in exile. It should not. And Tchiroma himself has said it openly. This is a revolution. If it is a revolution, then it must continue even when its leader is not physically present on the ground. I'm speaking to Cameroonians. Francophones must now learn from the Ambazonian people, the Ambazonian experience, a lesson written in pain, in sacrifice, and in iron resolve. When the regime in Yaoundé abducted the Ambazonian leaders, Sisiko Ayoktabe and his aides from Nigeria, and locked them behind the concrete walls of Kondengé, the regime believed it was checkmate. They believed that by capturing the leader, the movement would collapse. After all, in their thinking, when you strike the shepherd, the sheep scatter. But that wasn't the case. Ambazonians proved them wrong in ways the regime never imagined. Years have passed. Years have passed. Years of torture, years of isolation, years of imprisonment, and yet the Ambazonian struggle has not died. It did not even bend. It did not crack. It multiplied. It reorganized. It decentralized. The idea of a free Ambazonia became bigger than the men Yaoundé kidnapped, bigger than their physical presence, bigger than imprisonment, bigger than death itself. This is the lesson Cameroonian citizens, Francophones, must internalize today. A cause cannot survive if it depends entirely on one man. A movement that can be destroyed by silencing its leader is not a revolution, it is a campaign. And campaigns do not topple dictatorships that have fed fat on corruption and brutality for more than 4 decades. That is the Cameroon regime, for more than 4 decades. If the Isa Tchiroma-led revolution is to succeed, Cameroonians, listen to the sound of my voice, you must organize in such a way that even if Isa Tchiroma is incapacitated, is arrested, suppressed, or even killed, nothing, absolutely nothing stops the movement. This is how entrenched regimes crumble. not when one man rises, but when millions rise with him and continue even without him. Cameroonian citizens must also be clear about strategy. Strategy, ladies and gentlemen. Ghost towns and lockdowns have their place. They hurt the regime economically. They dry up revenue. They send a message that the people are not cooperating. But let no one deceive themselves. Ghost towns alone will not bring down the regime in Yaoundé. No dictatorship has ever been dismantled by staying at home on Mondays or Tuesdays or Wednesdays and Thursdays, as I hear. Ghost towns are a tactic. They are not a solution. And we know that in Ambazonia. What brings down a regime like this one that has fed on impunity for 42 years is organized resistance, disciplined resilience, and a deliberate effort to fracture the system from within. The army is the spine of the regime in Yaoundé. Break the spine and the body collapses. Create division within the army. Awaken the conscience of soldiers who themselves suffer under the same decaying system. And build alliances with those willing to stand for justice. And then the ground begins to shift. Ambazonia is already fighting in its territory for the past 9 years. If a Francophone-led revolution rises in the center, Yaoundé will not be able to hold both fronts. The regime survives today because the resistance is fragmented. The day two storms rise simultaneously, one from the north, one from the west. The center cannot hold. The revolution Tchiroma'S spoke of must become that second storm. So Cameroonians, hear this message clearly. The elections are over. You must now grow beyond the disappointment of the results and rise into the responsibilities of revolution. Tchiroma'S may be the face that awakened the masses, but the masses must now become the engine of the movement. Let Tchiroma'S lead, but let the revolution outgrow him. Let Tchiroma'S speak, but let thousands amplify what he says. Let him guide, but let the people march. Let him symbolize the cause, but let the cause be far greater than him, than the symbol. A revolution belongs to the people, not the man who announces it. And when the people finally realize that, the regime they fear today will tremble before them.